How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Barely There podcast. This is your host with the most, Duke Coughlin. You can follow me on Twitter at that pod guy Duke. You can follow the podcast at Barely There Pod. And as always, I'm joined with this jagoff over here to my right on the screen, in front of me on my screen, Lucas Perfetti 46. Lucas Perfetti, how's it going, buddy?
Great.
Fourth time of the off season.
I want to do an impromptu unpaid ad read. This is more so, I'm actually not going to shout out the company because they're not paying us, but for a fat kid, I cannot recommend a desk fan highly enough. Hooks right up to a USB cord, and this thing will save your life. It's been incredible to me. I've had a couple meetings because my building is on the west side, so by like 3:30 when the sun's out, it feels like I'm in a fucking greenhouse, and this thing has saved my life multiple times in many remote meetings. So anyone that's fat or just has heat issues, go ahead and get yourself a desk fan because it's the greatest investment I've ever made. And it was like $12 on Amazon. So yeah, that's what I got for you.
Yeah. So for listeners at home, Lucas is the fattest of all the rats. So I'd say that about confirms it. He probably has a sausage pizza just boiling in his fucking in his kitchen right now, just ready to go the second this podcast goes offline. So
you want to hear something fat? Actually, we have that day on Friday, so I've been like toning it back for this next week because I know how much we're gonna eat on Friday, which is gonna be disgusting. A little bit of Phil's, a little bit of Rico Benes, a lot of booze. It's going to be a good time. But that's completely unrelated and off the podcast. Want to hear another fat thing, though. That training camp hat that I've been preaching about on Twitter, if anyone follows me, they know I ordered it. Apple autofill, for some reason, had my parents' address in there. So it went to my parents' house. So I literally am just like, it's just sitting there waiting for me, but I don't want to drive to the suburbs right now. So yeah, check your Apple Auto Pay too. Make sure it's not hooked up to your the home address, the billing address of your phone bill. We've gone over this before.
Yeah, I was gonna say Apple Pay is probably genuinely gibberish to anybody who's listening on Google Play. Oh, that's right.
No, you can't fucking listen.
But anyway, enough of the jagoffery. I feel like we gotta jump in here a little bit with what's going on with the Chicago Bears. Hint, probably not much. It's the OTAs. I say it in a joking manner. This is the most boring point of the offseason because everybody has an opinion on every single player, on every little thing. If George McCaskey sneezes in Lake Forest, people are having fits about it, you know. But anyway, Matt Eberflus, this fucking guy. Let me tell you about this guy. This guy decided to stand up to the entire NFL, basically put his nuts on his desk and tell them we're doing full contact practice and there is not a damn thing you're going to do about it. Matt Eberflus slicked his hair back, mixed some pre-workout with some fucking au jus, walked into Hallis Hall in some unidentified practice in May and told everyone in that locker room, put the pads on, boys, buckle up your chin straps because we're hitting today.
I actually fucking love it. I mean, they did do something about it. Unfortunately, they canceled the practice, but I like the overall mentality. And I'm just going to read you a quote here from NBCsports.com. Team practice with live contact back in May, which is prohibited at that point in the year per CBA. Contact work is prohibited in all workouts per the NFL's off-season rules. Intensity and tempo of drills should be at a level conducted to learning with the player's safety as the highest priority. The Bears were warned about the infraction, but didn't make any adjustments to lessen the amount of contact at practice. So they were penalized by losing Tuesday's OTA. And to me, that just makes me so fucking happy because when you look at, I mean, even go back to the Kyle Long quote, I think it was on Barstool Chicago, when he was talking about would the Bears have went to the Super Bowl if Cody Parkey doesn't double doink the kick. And his brother stated, who came off of 2 back-to-back Super Bowls with 2 different teams, that we were too soft of a scheme and too soft of a front to make that run in the playoffs. That was his belief, and that's something that I believed, and I think that's something that has played out through the Matt Nagy era. I've harped out on this podcast a million times. We broke away in 2019, our 22 starters 2 weeks early, letting them know their job was safe, their payday was safe, and let's just worry about Green Bay. Took away all competition aspects. Right now, we're seeing that completely flipped on its fucking head. We've seen quotes from Jalen Johnson about it. Like, I like the idea of having a hard-nosed football team. You cannot be a finesse football team and win games in Soldier Field in December. Just that simple.
So I was thinking about it at work the other day, Lucas, and I think I might actually start a ticker for how many times Matt Eberflus says the word work from the beginning of training camp to the end. Because I'm curious because this guy is just all about like we need to go into our office and handle business, like big lunch pail guy Matt Eberflus is. And I think he expects that from like everyone on this football team. And it shows with him kind of breaking the rules to be like, okay, you know, we're rolling through the motions. We're seeing players. We're watching Justin Fields deep ball. We're impressed with that. Cole Kmet looks great in open space. That's awesome. The offensive line looks cohesive, I guess. Put some pads on and let's see what this team is really made of. Like, how hard have you been working in the offseason? We're gonna be able to tell the second you start touching each other. You know what I mean? Like, it's how good is Jalen Johnson press coverage right now in May? Well, is that going to dictate how good he is when we hit July? You know what I mean? Like, let's get our hands on each other. Let's get our paws on each other. It kind of reminds me of like, and I don't know, I don't want to throw my high school under the bus per se. It's definitely not happening today. But I know when I went to high school at an unidentified high school name, those 3 required days where you didn't hit or wear pads really turned into about a day and a half. I mean, if we're being totally honest, because at at a certain point, you got to see what these guys are made of. You got to see what type of toughness these guys have when they were, in the off season. And it kind of shows how hard some of these guys have been working. There's no rule that says you can't like hit outside of an NFL facility, during the off season or, anything. If you're hitting the weight room, chances are getting hit on a football field isn't going to bother you too much. But if you've been kind of lackadaisical, if you've been kind of just running around with your trainer and posting videos on Instagram, not really putting the actual work in, yeah, pads are probably going to bother you. And maybe that's how something like this got leaked. But regardless, I really like that Eberflus is doing this. It shows that it's going to be about hard work, man. This is exactly what his hits philosophy is. You know what I mean? Guys constantly fucking working hard and being physical, and it's just a defensive coach mentality,
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? Like, it's funny you say that about because I think right after we graduated, at least in Illinois, it turned into, oh, no more 2-a-days, but then they would have like 1 4-hour practice. I'm like, how is that any better? Like why not just have the 2-a-days? But no, I think you hit on a couple really good points. And I think specifically, like, not only having a defensive head coach, but I'll be the first to admit, like, when I saw Eberflus was a finalist and then I just looked at his picture, that's it. Only judgment. I was like, he looks like a fucking MIT professor or like a physics professor at MIT, some shit like that. I was just out on him from them. After they made the hire and I've actually looked into him more, the connections to Marinelli and Lovey, like, that is so big to me. I just feel like they were the only ones in Chicago that I've seen us run a respectable program. Think of it, like Trestman, Fox, Nagy, all of them had their big issues. Like, Lovey was most of my childhood. I got a little bit of what was that prick's name?
Dick Duran.
Dick Duran, yeah, a little bit of Dick Duran too. But then my memory, like, I can't remember before that. So to me, it's just like that's huge. And I just like the fact that it's all based on work, right? I like how he came up. I like that he's a 55-year-old guy that coached for 30 years. He's not some like, new fresh, because that's great when you find Sean McVay, but there's not, like, young guys are not necessarily the best head coaches. Even Brandon Staley in LA, like, he's a good coach for sure defensively, but his defense was getting its dick kicked in. They brought a ton of reinforcements. And I mean, him going for it on 4th, like, every fucking time. At first it was like, wow, this is really cool. Now it's like, he's just being irresponsible. He took wins away from them for going for it on 4th so much. So I like getting back to being like, I could tell that this guy is going to command respect in a room. And that's huge. I don't necessarily think the Bears right now, I don't think they need a best friend or like a cool buddy, or, I heard it described on Move the Sticks podcast. Maybe that's what you need to be that cool math teacher. Like, no, I don't fucking want a cool math teacher that was only 10 years older than me in high school that I thought was cool. Like, no, like that's not what I want in a head coach. I want a head coach to get fucking respect.
Well, and I think right there, that's key word right there is respect. And it feels like that's what Eberflus is kind of really pushing for, is like, you all need to earn my respect. Like, obviously I need to earn yours, but that will show with results. You know what I mean? Because that's what you want from your head coach. That's a guy like, it's like at the very top of the scale. That's what you see like in a guy like fucking Bill Belichick. You know what I mean? He's a guy who, like, if this is your first training camp or this is your first camp, he'll know your name. He'll probably know what you do very well. In fact, he'll know everything about you, but he's going to fucking make you earn, or like, you're going to have to earn his respect. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be like, I'm going to treat you like, oh, you're this incredible player from day one. It's, if you work hard, I will put you into the best position to win. You know what I mean? Like, if you come in here every day and you give it your all, we're going to win a lot of football games. And that's where Matt Eberflus has to fulfill his end of the deal. You know what I mean? Like, he's demanding respect now, but it's with the idea that we're going to get results. And as long as you get results, man, nothing else fucking matters. They will respect you.
Yeah, 100%.
But I mean, to really kind of drive that point home with respect, though, dude, Tony Soprano said it best, though, you know, to earn respect, you must give respect, you know, and you give respect by giving it your all in the field every single day. And you earn that respect. You know how you talk about how Matt Nagy broke away from camp and basically promised everyone their job. Matt Eberflus decided, hey, we're going to put our pads on and bust ass for a day, but guess what? You're going to get a day off in a couple days from it. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's like, if you work hard the first 3 days of the week, we can really get down to scheme the last two. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, we're going to half-ass it all week to say that we practice all week. And I don't know his practice schedule off the top of my head. This is just kind of the mentality I'm thinking of what he's kind of pushed so far, is like, we're going to bust ass when we need to, and then we're going to get down to fucking scheme. We're going to get down to the fucking to the film room, stuff like that. And that's how you build a real culture. And that's how Lovey did it. You'd hear about guys going on vacation on their day off because they busted their ass for 2 days straight.
Well, and I think the biggest, like, couple things I want to unpack there. First, you mentioned Billy B. I know for a fact Billy B has had OTAs taken away from him for being too physical. There's no doubt about it. You could fact check me on that. That is an assumption, but I guess I will say I know for a fact John Harbaugh has had that happen, and Sean Payton has had that happen. So we're talking about very respectable coaches that are willing to push the limit. And I think players somewhat respect that too, you know? And if you think we're just blowing smoke up your ass, like, go look at the quotes coming out of the players. I never once in 4 years heard about a non-generic, we're working really hard statement from the Nagy era. You know what I mean? Like, I never heard a player come out being like, damn, dude, training camp was hard. Like, these OTAs were difficult. Like, you're having multiple players come out and say, yes, we are working our asses off during this training camp. And that's huge. Like, at the end of the day, first, hard work's going to help you in any aspect of life. So yes, it's going to make the team better. It's going to make it perform higher than maybe the standards that certain players have. Right. It's also going to weed out the shit in the future. Like, you look at these guys that maybe won't want to sign a second contract because they're just trying to cruise by. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to weed out the players that don't like to work, and you're going to form a team of all guys that like to work. You know what I mean? And that does, I'm not comparing the Bears to the Patriots, but it does remind me of a very Patriot-esque type of formula, right? Or a very even Bill Parcells, like all of these old school throwback coaches that are like, we're just going to be the toughest motherfuckers out there. And honestly, like, throw your tinfoil hat on there for me. I think the lack of contact, this is something I wanted to call back to from your high school comments. I think the lack of contact leading up to the regular season is why so many players get injured, because their bodies are not ready physically to get hit over and over again. You go from essentially preseason where, like, okay, you're getting a couple licks in, but you go from like really only form fitting people up and not bringing them to the ground, all that shit, to 100%. And then you got guys, like you said, there's no rule that you can't hit on your own. So there's guys out there that are fucking playing Oklahoma drill at their old colleges and shit. And those guys come through and just destroy people to start the year. You know what I mean? So I just feel like it's a good thing. It's something that can't happen regularly. You can't just be missing practice all the time. But to me, they're sending very specific messages to the team. We want to work. We want to be tough. Like, we'll take the penalty of a day off, and that to me, that's huge, because the culture we just saw was very, oh yeah, pat each other on the back. Oh yeah, we're all, one fucking whatever. And then as soon as your head coach goes up to the podium, he throws everyone under the bus. Now, all this can go to shit if Eberflus handles himself at the podium the same way that Matt Nagy did. But for right now, it just looks like things are heading in the right direction. He could be a head coach, but in my opinion, just the vibe I'm getting just feels like something a lot better is happening than the past regime.
Yeah, and I mean, there's only so much you can take out of this time of the year anyway. So a lot of this really is speculation, but it's a lot of things, like you said, it feels like it's all moving in the right direction. It feels like there's a fucking plan here. It feels like Matt Eberflus has been waiting for this head coaching position for years, being a legit coach. You know what I mean? He's never been that head coach. He's always been the bridesmaid, never the bride. So he's finally getting a shot to really drive home a lot of things that he thinks are important from the defensive side of the football onto an entire team. And that's something that Lovie Smith did very well, and it's not like Matt Eberflus, we talked about how, you're kind of young or old in the NFL. Matt Eberflus is kind of hovering right there in the middle. It's not like he's like some old, battered old man, like kind of like, I don't want to slander John Fox that badly, because I don't think he was that bad per se. Like, he was an older guy. You know what I mean? It was definitely an older guy in the room. Whereas we went from that to the Matt Nagy extreme, where it was way down here, lack of experience, kind of the younger side of the spectrum. That didn't really have a lot of experience calling plays. That fucking hire blows me away the more you think about it. But like Matt Eberflus is kind of right there in the middle. He's been respectable as a coach on multiple levels for years. You know what I mean? It wasn't some like Arena League fucking football player or anything like that. It wasn't like he was a practice squad guy that just kind of got on with the right team or right head coach that kind of just, let him do his laundry or some shit. Like Matt Eberflus has cut his teeth in the NFL and the NCAA. So that's a good sign moving forward.
Hired at the time. He said something about that, how like when he was hired, I'm trying to think of where he was the first DC in college, but he was like the youngest DC at the time.
So I can't think of the college off the top of my head, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like, I really like the idea that he has been waiting to stamp his ticket, and I'll pull this all together at the end. But there is a Velus Jones Jr. comparison, because you think about someone like
Missouri, by the way.
What?
Missouri. He was the defense coordinator in Missouri for 7 years.
Okay, and that's SEC. Like, that's real ball.
Yep.
Either way, when you look at someone that's been waiting their turn to stamp the ticket, I would say Matt Eberflus is what Vic Fangio was 10 years before. You know what I mean? Like, he got his ticket stamped 10 years before. Vic Fangio started to enter that older age and finally got his job, whereas Eberflus is getting it about 10, 12, 15 years before Vic Fangio got that shot, because these guys have, the same way Fangio was, Eberflus has been over qualified for a head coaching job and getting passed over for guys like a Matt Nagy, for some of these stroke offs that we're seeing enter the league, guys like an Urban Meyer that had no business getting a fucking team. You know what I mean? Like, all of these people coming in, I feel like now Eberflus, you're gonna have that appreciation for it. You're not gonna take anything for granted. Like, I know for a fact these young coaches aren't taking their opportunity for granted, but I think you have a lot more appreciation knowing that you've been grinding for 25 years to get there versus grinding for 7 years. You know what I mean? Like, and getting handed that golden fucking ticket. And it's the same thing with Velus Jones. Velus Jones got bounced around. He went to a different college. He was only used as a returner. He finally got used as a legitimate receiver in his last year, his fucking 17th year in college. And he showed some ability there. And then he went to the Senior Bowl and showed like, hey, yeah, they've just been using him as a one-trick pony. And maybe he was getting pushed down the depth chart because he wasn't polished enough. But I truly believe, like, you look at Velus Jones too, and I finally went back and watched that 1920 football drive when they drafted him. Like, you could tell, like, if that guy is not good, it will not be because of a lack of effort or because he's not mature enough and spends his money on stupid shit and goes out and drinks. Like, you are going to get that effort coming in. And it's like, that's fine with me. If he busts because he's just not good enough, that's one thing. But if you know, the Jamarcus Russell article just came out from the Players Tribune, like if you bust out because you're not fulfilling your potential, it's way worse than busting out just because you don't have that potential, if that makes sense.
No, dude, you're 100% on point with a lot of that.
B Wolf, thanks for coming in.
Honestly, I feel like Velus Jones to you is Travis Gibson to me, and I'm kind of glad you have that connection with a player. I'm really happy because I fucking love Travis Gibson. But like every time I see you talk about Velus Jones, like there's this little sparkle in your eye.
Dude, I'm
like,
telling you, man, like it started as a joke, but I really like the more I look into him, the better he is. And if you look at my timeline from the last fucking 3 years and type in Senior Bowl, you are going to see I've always fucking Wolf. You're going to see I've always been a huge proponent of drafting Senior Bowl standouts, and the Bears got a few in this draft. So, let's just let it shake out. I know because, Bears Twitter, you got one side of like the national media completely underrating us, and then you have Bears Twitter being like, fuck you guys, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, oh my God.
But kind of jumping back to the original point about Matt Eberflus kind of like working his way to this position. The biggest thing that sticks out to me when you look at his career, like year by year, like tenure or anything like that, is it was never just one big year that would like put him on the map. It was never like, oh, Matt Eberflus was a linebacker coach on a top 5 defense. Like, let's give him a head coaching vacancy. You know what I mean? It's like he gradually just kept moving up the ladder. He wouldn't get noticed. He would not get the attention that he probably deserved. But like, you look at his career, man, there's no lateral move. There's zero lateral movement throughout his entire coaching hierarchy. He moved his way from a student assistant coach to a graduate assistant, outside linebackers coach, defensive backs coach, defensive coordinator, moved to the NFL, which was a big step when you're a fucking pretty solidified defense coordinator in NCAA, to not even take a DC position, but a linebackers coach position. And then he moves on to the Cowboys, and then he becomes linebacker coach and passing game coordinator. And then he becomes a defense coordinator. And now we are here where he is a head coach. Like I never really looked at it like when he got hired, but he has never taken a lateral position. It has constantly been gradually up the ladder. Maybe he hasn't taken that leap per se, but I mean, he's a head coach in the NFL now, and he's earned his way. There's a lot of people around the league, including a guy who coached him in 1991 by the name of Nick Saban, that he's worked under, that will vouch for Matt Eberflus. And there's an impressive resume here. And I know this is probably something we probably should have talked about when he got hired. And I don't want to drink the Eberflus or the Eberfuel a little too hard, but like, dude, I'm telling you, pre-workout and fucking au jus. I'm not recommending anybody to drink that, so don't ever like tell your doctor or tell police that I told you to drink that, but it's probably delicious. But like this guy's done it. He's moved his way all the way up. So I feel like he's going to demand respect. He's been told to be intense everywhere he's gone, and he's already proving that by having motherfuckers hit in May. So
I mean, you got to think, dude, if Nick Saban was his coach, like, what do you think he learned? That's literally like the Saban Belichick way, the do your job. Like, that's what their whole shit has revolved around. And they're some of the most successful coaches. And again, we're not making that comparison, but it's just a good sign that he comes from that. Because I don't want people to be like, oh, these guys are jagoffs because they said,
dude, Schleg Daddy is going to fucking destroy us in the DMs this week for bringing up both Belichick and Saban when we're talking about
him, though. He's connected to him. No, but you're right. No lateral movements. And another thing that we're going to bring up, and another thing that I really like that he's doing, is putting guys on different teams. We just recently heard that Tevin Jenkins was with the second team. Larry Bourne moved to right tackle, and Braxton Jones, I believe is his name, was playing left tackle. That's that guy that was, I believe, played well at the Senior Bowl and is just a freak in terms of size. He's like everything you want and size as a left tackle and measurables as a left tackle. This fucking guy Wolf is making me laugh. But yeah, I just think I like that, right? It drives competition. It lets everyone know, hey, we're putting you on notice. I want to preface it too and say, I think they're just trying different things out, especially with the offensive line, to see how different guys look at different positions and what's going to happen. Say Tevin Jenkins goes down. Now who fills in at left? Is Braxton Jones good enough to play right tackle, or do we plug him right in at left and move Borum to right? Like, so I do think there is some of that shuffling doing just to see how different units look together, especially because there's so many question marks on the offensive line. But nonetheless, I fucking love that. Taking high-end draft picks like a Jalen Johnson or a Tevin Jenkins and bumping them down on the depth chart during an OTA practice or two, just to let everyone know, hey, we don't give a fuck when you were drafted. We already traded Khalil Mack, son. Like, get with the program or don't. It's up to you.
Yeah, to kind of pick up off that point, though, really the point I wanted to make with this entire situation, because there's a lot of people who are really blowing this out of proportion. Bears Twitter gonna Bears Twitter. We're seeing a whole lot of idiots really, howling at the moon about how Tevin Jenkins isn't with the first team. We don't know right now what the offensive line is going to look like in July, but I'm assuming the first week of training camp, we're going to have a really good idea of what our starting offensive line is going to look like. That being said, I do like the point that you brought up, Lucas, because this is something that we've brought up on this podcast before about holding anyone and everyone accountable. Like, there is no, like, your draft status doesn't matter. The amount you're being paid doesn't matter. It might even be working against you if you're not playing up to expectations. What you did in the previous the previous leadership structure, that doesn't totally matter right now. Like, we need to see what you do today. Do you buy into the new hit system? Do you buy into what Ryan Poles is bringing to the table? So there is a lot of accountability there, but I do think when it gets down to it with this point, if I can speculate, and you already kind of brought it up a little bit, we are going to see a lot of different combinations on the offensive line. We're going to see it quite a bit during training camp. Probably not working necessarily at the ones once it gets to that point, but as a former offensive lineman myself, yeah, I know, high school offensive lineman, I'm a badass. I still sleep in my Letterman's jacket. Like, that the greatest years of my life, obviously. It's all gone downhill since. But like, the biggest thing is like familiarity with the guy next to you. And you can't build that unless you do it in practice. You know what I mean? Like, obviously game situations are ideal, but you're going to want your best five out there at all times. But you need to be prepared for a world where Tevin Jenkins gets injured, a world where Larry Borum gets injured. Honestly, I was thinking about it, and the two guys who I think are safe as starters on the offensive line are Cody Whitehair and Lucas Patrick. Outside of that, it's wide open. So that's a situation where, like, we're going to see the starting five at some point in July once we hit training camp, more in August as well. But like, we're going to see different combinations. We're not going to get hit in the mouth by any type of situation. And I think this is where Eberflus's like defensive philosophy comes into mind, because defensive linemen are very interchangeable. Like, you're with different groupings, pairings, and stuff like that. But at no point with anyone on the field is anyone not used to who they're playing next to. And that's what we want on the offensive line. And that's something we haven't had in a while. That's how you get Rashad Coward playing starting 8 games, because you're so scared of what another offensive lineman might look like in that spot that you refuse to fucking pull the trigger. That's not going to be a problem with the Chicago Bears moving forward. I can almost guarantee it, because I think that's exactly what they're trying to do here.
Well, that's another thing too. I think that they may have, I think that they know in their mind what they want to start already, and who they want to start. But if someone's not performing 3 weeks into the season, I think this gives them that flexibility to pull that person and shift the line the way they want to. So that's another really. Here's the thing, right? Like, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I would say first week of training camp, I would start maybe being concerned if Tevin Jenkins isn't starting, but definitely by the first week of preseason, because it will have to be set by then for that first unit. It shouldn't go on any longer than that. I could see them rotating a little bit in training camp, but not nearly as much as they have been in OTAs.
Yeah, and I think the bigger thing you're also going to be seeing is what different positions can these drafted guys play? What different positions can these veteran guys play? You know what I mean? I've been hearing that you see Larry Borum and Braxton Jones playing left tackle, obviously. You see Dakota Dozier and Sam Musfer playing right guard a little bit. You're going to be seeing different guys intertwined on the offensive line. Anyone who's been listening to me, Lucas, long enough, even anywhere else you might have heard us, we've always kind of preached the idea that if you're an offensive lineman in the NFL, you can play anywhere. And if you can't play anywhere, there's a good chance you're not going to stay an offensive lineman in the NFL. So Yeah, dude, I really think you're going to see a lot of different combinations. You're going to see a lot of guys playing out of position. I would not be surprised if at some point we saw like Tevin Jenkins take some snaps at guard. You know what I mean? Just to see what that looks like. You know, he'd be a big fucking guard, but it sounds like a good problem to have if he can maul. You know what I mean? And that's kind of his thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of just saw what everyone can do. You know, even if we move that center that we drafted from Illinois, maybe he sees some snaps at guard as well. Yeah, Kramer. You know, just to get the best blocking five on the field working together. You know what I mean? And the more you mess around with groupings, the more you play different guys together, the more they get comfortable. So like if it's week 4 and fucking our right guard who has yet to be named as a starter gets injured, we can toss somebody else in there and it's like, all right, let's roll.
I think another really important part in terms of like X's and O's, right? Like some guards give more help than others, some need more help than others. You know what I mean? So you're able to identify that and maybe match. So say you do have a Mustafa who, for everyone that doesn't like Mustafa, it looks like he is going to be chilling here because he is featured on every like major picture recently that came out front and center. I feel like he's all over the place. So maybe you're looking at a weaker guard like Mustafa being next to your strongest tackle like Tevin Jenkins, or maybe they feel that Larry Borum's their strongest tackle, so they wanted to work Mustafa next to, you know what I mean? Like, so I think realistically, like when you're talking, you know, even something as small as like, hey, this guy's actually got an elite kickback from the right side, like he can actually overcompensate and stick his left hand out and slow down somebody for his guard. So we're going to go ahead and put our right guard and right tackle, those two guys together, if that makes sense. So I just feel like, you know, looking at those combos gives you a lot more options, which is what the Bears need right now. Let's be real. Like they're not a very strong unit on paper. Who knows? Maybe they overperform, but the best way to find out is by having all these guys get legitimate reps at different positions.
Yeah, and that's going to be the key, and that's why training camp is really going to be important for offensive linemen. And I think another thing we need to keep in mind is that we don't really have any veteran tackles that are going to be seeing significant time. So really any of these spots are interchangeable. Like say you get into like halfway through the season and you've seen bright spots out of Tevin Jenkins or Larry Borum, but there's just something not clicking there. So you swap them, you know what I mean, and see what the type of look that you get there. This is going to be kind of an experimental year. I know people don't like hearing that term. People probably don't like hearing the fact that we're not winning the Super Bowl, but again, that's a Band-Aid you need to rip off right fucking now. But we're going to see what these types of guys are made of. We're going to see what Tevin Jenkins can do well. We're going to see what Larry Borum can do well. Anybody who was drafted before Ryan Poles came into the building, you got to be ready to do anything. You know, we've heard discussions of Jalen Johnson possibly playing in the slot, Kyler Gordon possibly playing in the slot. You know, we've also heard that, you know, Thomas Graham is the set slot guy. We've also heard that Kendall Vildor might pop outside. Regardless, there's a lot of different spots we can see moved around until people are in their comfortable positions, because that gives Poles a lot more insight going into next year, what he has on this roster, who needs to move and what needs to get improved. And that weirdly rhymed. I apologize for that.
No, like we've talked about it. This is a bit of an evaluation year, right? Like who can we salvage from the old regime and who can we build around, and who's going to get a contract, and then who do we move on from? You know, I feel like that's when you look at some of these names, like, you know, I guess Quan would be one of them that could possibly be on the chopping block, but it just seems like he's such a seamless fit. You have a linebacker coach. That's something we haven't highlighted, but like, what's Roquan going to do having a legitimate linebacker coach, a 20-year linebacker coach, now being the head coach and overseeing the defense? You know, like that should help a lot. And then that's another thing, you know what I mean? You look at like Eddie Jackson, like this is a huge prove it year for him. I think even if he performs really well, they're probably not going to stay with him. But who knows? Maybe he turns back into vintage Eddie Jackson. And it's like you can't live without him, you know?
Yeah, that's going to be it's hard to really put a definitive answer on that yet. We're going to really have to see how he looks in a Matt Eberflus defense, because who knows, man, he could thrive. Matt Eberflus could see a guy who's like been kind of dragged through the rigmarole. That was a terrible term, rigmarole. Who the fuck says that? I'm an idiot. But like he could see a guy who's just kind of like broken and beaten, you know what I mean? Like he's had a rough couple years, but like there could be something to salvage here. Like we just saw him do this in Xavier Rhodes, you know what I mean? And he got probably the best Xavier Rhodes we've seen in almost 4 years. You know, it's probably been about that long since he was like really shutting shit down up in Minnesota. So yeah, that's going to be a big evaluation, but you know, kind of like what Wolf says here in the comments, which we will highlight. Nobody is setting their spot, you know what I mean? Like this is like we were kind of saying, this is a big prove it year. This is a year for everyone to kind of show their worth. Roquan Smith, I don't think it's going to take very long. And kind of the highlight of this episode was the name that I took a lot of time to think about in General Fields and Captain Quan. Two guys in Justin Fields and Roquan Smith who have really just kind of taken to what Matt Eberflus is kind of dishing out here.
99% of men who say rigmarole. I don't even know how to say it.
Rigmarole what?
Rigmarole.
See, I said it right that time.
Either way,
at least I could speak. But I guess to kind of finish up my point, and then I'll let you go, Lucas. Biggest thing is like with Roquan Smith and both Justin Fields is like they've taken to it. They're in there every day, busting their ass. I feel like that's everything that a guy like Matt Eberflus wants. And I really hope that Matt Eberflus decides to bring the captain's patch back, because I think those are two guys that are absolutely going to deserve it. You see any of the pictures, you see any of the highlights, you see any of the video from OTAs or anything like that, those two are front and center every single time you see that team, whether it's a breakdown, whether it's stretches. You see those two talking to each other so often, almost as like they're already starting this kind of like circle of captains, you know what I mean? Because that's kind of what you want. Obviously, you want your captains to entwine naturally, but you always kind of want that idea that like Roquan can go to Justin or Justin can go to Roquan in a game, you know what I mean? And be like, dude, I need to mentally get here, you know what I mean? Help me out. You know, just that type of thing. And I really think they're kind of setting the tone early. And it's just great to see, because I really see those two as obvious cornerstones moving forward. And I think Roquan will fit very well in Matt Eberflus' system. And I think Justin Fields has all the potential in the world to be that guy on a football team.
And that's just like another thing I feel like people are underrating. Like, if you have that guy at quarterback, your team has an opportunity to win every single game, no matter what the circumstances are. Like, we've seen it, dude. We fucking seen it up north when Aaron Rodgers maybe didn't have the best team, you know what I mean? But they always found ways to win. Like, we've seen it. Matthew Stafford, how many 10-6 random one-off seasons did he have because he just fucking played out of his mind that year? Like, people are really undervaluing the potential of what Fields can bring to the team this year. I understand, like, there's not a lot of weapons. Like, we get it. We've pounded that home. But I just feel like something has changed where it went from like, oh yeah, if you have that guy, everything else is set and you just got to build around him to now you don't know if you have that guy until you've built around him. And I feel like that's something that's been lost in the crosshairs. I don't know when that shift happened, but you get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like in like 2006, it was like, as long as you have your quarterback, you're good. Like, everything else you can worry about later. Like, quarterback's the only thing that matters. And I get it, you know, like, some Fields had a rough rookie season, but I just find it funny. Who was it? Was it Dan Orlovsky or Phil Simms that came out before the draft and said he was a last guy in, first guy out type of guy?
Dan Orlovsky, you will never be able to. Listen. You can praise Justin Fields all you want because you've done it since you said that stupid ass quote, but you'll never be able to take that back. And Justin Fields has done nothing but prove you wrong since he's been
here. No, that's like something that our guy Velas said. Velas Jones Jr. legitimately said, I've gone in there early as fuck and he's there. Like, if I leave super late, he's there. He was like, Justin is always at the facility, lifting or whatever it may be. So, yeah, dude, just run out the back of an end zone or something. Speaking of media being jagoffs, speaking of the media being jagoffs, there's an Akeem Hicks clip floating around that actually I don't like his response at all. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, and it's very conveniently cut where it's just him saying, when I entered the league, I had Drew Brees and Tom Brady. When I was in Chicago, let's just say I didn't have Drew Brees and Tom Brady, and now I have Tom again. So, like, I appreciate that. What people don't see is the prompted question prior to it, where the reporter legitimately asks, hey, how does it feel to be back with an elite quarterback because you didn't have elite quarterback play in Chicago? I do think Hicks could have answered it better. He's a vet. He knows better, that he knows that was going to get fucking clipped. I think there was a little bit of intent behind it, but I do think it's being fucking blown out of proportion. That guy gave us everything he had the entire time he was here. He re-signed with us before it really even looked like the Bears were going anywhere. You know, like what we signed him in 2016, 2017. We re-signed him for, I think, another couple of years. So, like, this guy's been through it with us. He's older. He's always been fucking the man. You know, it wasn't right for the Bears to try to sign him back, especially after we saw the money he got. But let him go ring chase and be happy. I get it. Like, but you shouldn't turn on, to me, Akeem Hicks is a legend in the Bears community. Like, he is that dude. He emulated everything that was good about the 2018 season and anything that was good about the Matt Nagy era, you know, and the Ryan Pace era. So, you know, Draymond Green just had a clip. I don't know if you saw that floating around, but he was like, he thanked a reporter that asked him a question because he was like, I saw that you commented on a video that was just clipped of me talking about Kevin Durant when they didn't put in the question that prompted me to talk about Kevin Durant. And I respect you for doing that and having integrity. And I was just like, damn, dude, like, Draymond is crazy, but sometimes what he says is like really fucking hits home. You know what I mean? Because I feel like we see that a lot now in general. People trying to set up other fucking players and stuff like that just so they get clicks and retweets and all that bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, and we were just talking about it. I'm pretty sure the last episode we recorded about like the Tevin Jenkins question, how he just kind of like that dude was really trying to toss one in there and be an asshole without just straight up being an asshole about it and get Tevin to kind of stumble, which Tevin just kind of was like, I don't understand your question. Ask it again. Like, it was almost like Tevin was asking a more direct way, which, you know, I like that type of thing. But, you know, back to the whole Akeem thing, you know, like I really think you summed that up really well. I've always been a huge Akeem Hicks guy. Obviously, Lucas, you know, I've always defended him in every situation. That's just because Akeem's my guy. But I really think the biggest thing you need to take out of it if you're a Bears fan is just look at it from his point of view. You know what I mean? Like, what did our quarterback play really look like? You know, whether whoever's fault it was, what did our quarterback play look like while Akeem Hicks was here? You know what I mean? We saw guys like Jimmy Clausen get shots. Like, that's just fucking disgusting.
What he said was 100% accurate.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, if that scorns you, like if this bugs you about kind of how he said it, and if you don't really want to take the time to look at the context of what the question he was answering, just think of it this way. Did he take a shot at the fans? Did he say that Tampa fans down here, I've heard about them and I think they're going to be great? You know, did he say like, oh, you know, it's kind of sucked playing for like a dead franchise or like a team that was just kind of middling or any of that stuff? No, he didn't. And I've always known Akeem as a guy who's always been very, very, very receptive to the fans. He fed off that energy at Soldier Field. He always loved how well we showed up as fans. And I think that's the biggest thing you have to take from your favorite players when they leave teams, man. As long as they're not like shitting on the fans or shitting on the city, say what you want about whatever happened the last few years. You know what I mean? Like, that era's over. Matt Nagy's gone. Ryan Pace is gone. Mitchell Trubisky sadly is gone. Like, and this, like, I'm a big Mitchell Trubisky guy. I'm a big Justin Fields guy. I didn't feel scorned at all about those quarterback comments at all, because whether, as much as I love both those guys, we never got to see the production that they really should have shown yet. You know what I mean? Justin yet, obviously. Mitch, I feel, and you know, whatever, say what you want, I feel like he never got a fair shot. But like everyone in between, like, dude, we had Nick Foles out there trying to run the read option. You know what I mean? Like, we had a lot of wild shit going on there. And it's hard to be upset with that. I just want Akeem to have a healthy season with Tampa Bay, get a shot at a ring, because I don't know any guy who's really been a fucking dog with us over his career in Chicago that probably deserves a ring more than Akeem Hicks. Maybe Khalil Mack, but Akeem was here before Khalil.
Yeah, and just a quick Mitchell Trubisky update. George Pickens, he's been one of the quarterbacks to release it for sure, throw it down the field. A lot of the guys have been trying to get with the program, which is totally fine. You only have so many reps, but yeah, he's been launching it. Pat Fryermuth has been talking about him too. I'm pretty sure he's doing really well in Steelers training camp. And I think he's going to start from what in Steelers OTAs. From what it looks like, he just seems like he's the guy for this year at least. But no, you're 100% right. And like what Akeem Hicks said was 100% accurate. And if you heard the question, it's on my page right now. It should be like the second or third tweet down. He literally was like, yeah, what was it like working with an incompetent offense and always having to bail them out was the context of the question, excuse me. But yeah,
which, I mean, dude, if we're being honest,
that's exactly what the fuck was going on.
It's not even like a quarterback thing at that point. It's the defense had to bail out the offense, regardless how you felt about the guy taking the snaps. The offense wasn't working, and this right here has a lot to fucking do with it, not the fucking guy taking snaps. So I think honestly, if Akeem were to speak completely bluntly, maybe without being like fucking questioned about it, he might be a little bit talking overall on the offense more than just pointing at a quarterback, because maybe I'm remembering incorrectly, but I always remember Akeem like being tight with guys like fucking Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles, and Justin Fields. I remember him being really hyped up when we drafted Justin Fields. So
yeah,
I don't see him being like a scorned X or anything like that. I think he was just answering a question honestly the way it was framed. He's not trying to start shit in Tampa. He just got signed there to a pretty big deal and he wants to win a ring. So
that's
more power to him.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I agree entirely. I mean, that's about it. What else do we got to talk about? I know there are a couple free agents here I wanted to list for you and see if you think they'd be worth getting. Here's the thing, though. Like with free agents, I feel like we're not going to, the oldest person I think we acquired in free agency was 29. I believe that was the kid from the strong safety, I want to say, from
Tennessee.
From Tennessee or from Dane something. I want to say it was Dane something. But either way, like, other than fucking Velus Jones being 30 at draft day, like we haven't really acquired anyone older. So I'm just kind of looking at these names and it's like the only ones that kind of fit it are, Rashad Cowers out there.
Shut up.
But honestly, like the only ones that kind of fit at a position of need are Will Fuller and Eric Flowers, like Eric Flowers, I think is one of the most, or was at least one of the most overrated players. And now he's finally he's still on the market for a reason. Will Fuller, I actually would love the idea of, but the only problem is his only healthy season came after he got suspended for PEDs the season after. So it's like, he's always injured. I like what he adds to an offense, but like, what kind of money is he getting?
So I'll say flat out, I'm not in on Will Fuller just because of how injury prone he is. And like, we've already dealt with enough of that wide receiver. Man, I don't want to play that game again. I would rather take a shot at what we have than spend too much money there. I will say Eric Flowers. It was obviously former first-round pick. Everyone knows the story about him with the Giants, failing miserably. He looked fucking bad at left tackle with the Giants. But I really think he found a home in both Washington and Miami, moving inside. But I feel like that kind of first-round pick expectation kind of really hovered over his head quite a bit. I don't know if necessarily it'd be a guy I'd want to sign just to start right away. I'd want him to be able to come in and compete, but I liked what I saw to Eric Flowers once he moved inside. I do agree with you, though. I feel like he got a little overhyped there for a second because he went from being so bad at left tackle to looking serviceable inside. So people were like, oh my gosh, Eric Flowers is back. But that's just not how that shit works. You know what I mean? It's just by comparison, it was such a leap. But in reality, it's like you're still middle tier type guard. But if that's the move we want to make, I really wouldn't mind that at all. Holy shit, Wolf. I can't disagree with that more. I'm sorry, buddy.
Well, here's the thing. Like, Wolf, that was the next person I was going to bring up. He's 29 years old.
It's injury, though. He's not going to play next year.
Not even, I think he'll come back at some point. But why would Odell Beckham, like, you got to think it's a two-way street. Like, why would Odell Beckham want to go to a team that's in a clear rebuild? I mentioned Will Fuller and Eric Flowers because they're still on the market, not because of injury and because they're elite players. You know what I mean? Like, like he's not going to want to fucking come here unless you throw an absurd amount of money at him, which would be irresponsible at this point. The Rams got him for nothing, bro.
Well, it's because he wanted to go in a Super Bowl too.
That's what I'm saying. But like, is he fine now after one Super Bowl, or does he want to join with another good team? Like, he spent some shit years in New York, like, does he want to do that again? I don't know.
New York to Cleveland too. And like, I don't want to like get it mixed up. Like, I like Odell. I always have. I feel like he got a pretty bad rap, but sometimes he does hit kind of hover around that diva area. If it was next year and you're asking me this, where we kind of have a better idea of what this team is, I'm probably really on board. I'm probably actually really pushing for it. Like, why not? You know what I mean? Especially with the wide receiver room the way it is. But with Eberflus kind of trying to set a culture with a lot of this core guys that are in the building right now and kind of trying to see where we go from there. That's why I would kind of wait before we make a move like this, because I really think, I'm not saying like a guy like Odell Beckham's going to be available next year, but I am saying there's going to be a pretty good wide receiver out there that's going to be very attainable. You know what I mean?
It seems that way, but it seems like the best way to get him now is through a trade, because every quality wide receiver that went to free agency either got re-signed or got traded. You know what I mean? Like, who else other than Allen Robinson? Then you had people paying $21 million for fucking Christian Kirk because that was the best out there. People trading first for fucking Marquise Brown. So they are at a premium right now.
I think first, personally, if I can kind of wrap it up, my point at least, you can go on after this. I want to see what Darnell Mooney really is. I want to see if we can look at him as like possibly wide receiver one potential or not, because if that's the case, like we had guys like DJ Chark signed Detroit for cheap last year. Like we had the Devontae Parkers of the world that signed, there was wide receivers in this market that kind of flew under the radar that were pretty good gets for those teams. Like I feel like Devontae Parker in fucking New England might actually pop off pretty well. And DJ Chark, I'm actually really worried about playing him in the North. Not worried about Jared Goff, obviously, but I think he is a stud wide receiver in his own respect. I think those type of guys are going to be there. You know what I mean? Or, potentially that could be our first pick next year. It could be a wide receiver. We don't know how this season's going to go. I don't hate DK Metcalf. I just don't think it's realistic.
I just don't know. Yeah. Like my biggest thing is it has to be logical, right? And like everything that Poles has done tells you he's not going to trade high-end capital and give cap space for a guy that runs straight lines. Like, I hate to say it like that. Like, he's fucking a freak. He's elite. He looks like he should be playing outside linebacker. I get all that stuff. Like, he has star power to him. There's no doubt. He's a very, very good player. I wouldn't put him in my top 10 receivers, though. I wouldn't. Like, I'm sorry. I'd rather have Stephon Diggs than fucking DK Metcalf. Like, I'd rather have Cooper Kupp. I'd rather have a lot of guys than DK Metcalf. I think what he adds is great, but the amount of value he's going to receive in terms of contract value and in terms of fucking draft compensation, I don't think it's worth it for the Bears, and I don't think it makes logistic sense. Now, if we're going to go into a little bit older of an age bracket, there's two things that I would actually really support. Signing J.C. Treader to center and bumping Patrick to guard. That would be helpful. Or getting Eric Fisher. Eric Fisher has ties to both teams, and he's only 31, so it's not like he's like Jason Peters coming in at 36 or 37, whatever it is. Like, those are two guys that I feel like if they can get them on good one-year deals, I would feel a lot better about the protection of Justin Fields, and then I think we'd be able to get a much clearer picture on if he's the guy or not. He would not be the best. That's insane. I'm sorry, Wolf. I'm going to retract this statement. DK Metcalf would not be the best wide receiver to wear a Bears jersey ever, because that's Brandon Marshall, and this is DK. Okay, when it comes to Brandon Marshall, he's fucking Thanos. He's Bane. Like, I'm sorry. Like, okay,
big beef. Like, not little beef. We're talking fucking big beef.
We're talking extra hot, extra sweet, extra cheese. Dip twice, foot long Toronto roll
with some fucking pre-workout topped on top, some fucking e-refuel.
He corrected himself. Thank God. I'm glad you put that in the chat right after. No, but yeah, I just like right now for what I see on offensive line market versus what I see on because free agency is not over, man. They could sign someone right before training camp. They could sign 3 weeks.
Akeem Hicks literally just got signed for $10 million.
Yeah. So this is like, and I still can't believe he got that much, bro. Like, I think he's like 6 million base as well. There's not as much incentive as I thought.
6.5, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's good for him, dude. Like, for him to be chasing a ring and getting fucking paid, like, that's awesome for him. But yeah, I think realistically for what's on the market, I'd rather have the few O linemen that I mentioned over any receiver that's available.
Yeah, I think Eric Fisher and Eric Flowers are two names that really pop out to me, at least. Fisher, it would really make that offensive tackle discussion really interesting. But I would not be surprised at all, because teams do this every year, especially teams that are a little bit younger or a little bit inexperienced on the offensive line. I could see us bringing in that training camp body, that big name, to, if for no other reason, to kind of push everyone else. You know what I mean? Like, to kind of be like, hey, we like you, but we're going to bring in a true veteran to probably take your spot if you don't light it up this training camp. You know what I mean? Like, keep that fucking fire under people's asses. You know what I mean? Like, do not have any sort of, like, not necessarily like have stability, obviously, because you always want stability as an NFL coach or NFL team, but like have that, like, what if I slip up on this play, have that pressure, have these guys kind of be on edge, have them be comfortable with you as a head coach, but also know that he's going to hold you accountable every fucking step of the way. And a camp body does that. Teams do it all the time. Even if they have no intention on a guy like that starting, they just want to get the most out of somebody else on the fucking team.
You don't like Treader?
Oh, I really like JC Treader, actually. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up.
No, I just wanted to make sure, because that's, to me, out of all the guys that I mentioned, JC Treader would be my favorite. And that
would move Lucas Patrick, I think, over to right guard, which would really stabilize the fucking interior.
Dude, you're talking about Treader didn't let up one, or I think he let up one sack. I'll bring up the numbers right now. Yeah, one sack in 1,039 snaps. 5 penalties all year. So like, that's like, those are really good fucking numbers, dude, to be penalized once every 2.5 games. Like, that's really good, especially for a team that had issues with discipline before.
Yeah, no, that's I'm actually really on board with that.
I would be willing to stretch it and say he's definitely a top 10 center, and depending on how he progresses, not how he progresses, but how he fits in the system, he could be top 5 performance.
Well, dude, with the way that entire situation happened with the Packers didn't let him walk because they didn't want him back. They let him walk because there was no way they were going to be able to fucking afford him. Like, the Browns were offering to pay him pretty good money, and that's why they ended up drafting the center that they have now. I think it's Corey Linsley or something like that.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
Yes. So, I mean, that's how that entire thing played out. Like, losing JC Treader, obviously living up here in Wisconsin, I listen to a lot of just sports radio in general, and they were really not happy about losing JC Treader. It was something that it was kind of the nature of the business type situation.
It's especially the nature of the business when your quarterback bends you over for an extension once every 2 years.
Oh yeah, no, they love to bitch about that too. But they also suck Aaron Rodgers dry. But that's a story for an entirely new day. But yeah, to kind of clear it up, JC Treader, Eric Fisher, Eric Flowers, those are like 3 offensive linemen at the absolute worst. Bring them in, be a camp body, so they get a chance to either show other teams what they can do, or they can take a starting spot for the Chicago Bears. It's a win-win.
Yeah. No, yeah, I hear you.
But,
you got anything else, Duke? Is there anything else that came up in the last 2 weeks that bothers you?
No, I think that's about it. I'm fucking really on board with drinking some Eberfuel though. And if you guys don't know what Eberfuel is, I kind of talked about it at the beginning of the show. It is pre-workout, probably like the most like potent pre-workout you could think of, like Bucked Up or something crazy like that, and just mixed with just a fucking warm batch of au jus, and you just like fucking you take the au jus jar and you just fucking drink it, man. It comes down your beard, you save some for fucking later, but like you're just 100% Matt Eberflus like all fucking day.
It's one step back from the Dan Campbell amphetamines and fucking espresso mix.
Yeah, essentially. It's really close. Like they're gonna fucking they might have like a powerlifting contest when Detroit comes to Chicago the first time.
I hope so.
We might see some crazy shit at House Hall. We're going to see a lot of fucking red face. We know that for a fact.
100%.
Whether it's from them or whether it's from me and this fat rat I'm sharing the screen with. But anyway, that's been Barely There. As we've said on the last podcast, just right now during the off season, we're going to try to go as much as we can. But if we take a week off, man, we're not pushing you guys aside or anything. We just don't want to mash our meat too long on an hour-long podcast when you actually take the time to listen and review us. Which, by the way, take the opportunity to subscribe, listen to the podcast, listen to some old episodes. Our boy Mel actually pulled up some pretty good receipts. Like,
yeah,
where me and Lucas were talking about the two guys who were drafted with the first 2 picks of the Chicago Bears right on the top of our show before it happened. So, definitely give us a look. Once we hit training camp, we're going to be fucking obnoxious with how much we're going to record. You're going to see our faces every single week, probably multiple times a week at a certain point. But be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, not Google Play because we're not there. I might throw you guys a bone. I might jump on Google Play. Check us out on YouTube.
Google Play. Fuck that. I saw a gift card. I sent it to you, Duke, like maybe last month around Mother's Day, and it was for Google Play. I'm like, who even fucking uses the Google Play Store if you can't get it?
Dude, it's definitely like moms who are like playing fucking Farmville for like.
That's exactly all it's for. Yeah,
exactly. But if you wanna toss your input on the show, we talked to our boy Brandon Wolf because he commented on our YouTube page. Be sure to YouTube us, Barely There Podcast. We're definitely there. You'll see the logo. Don't check our search history though, please. I'm just kidding. But anyway, I feel like I covered it all. I'm Duke Coughlin. You can follow me at that pod guy Duke on Twitter. This is Lucas. That's Lucas Perfetti. You can follow him at Lucas Perfetti46 on Twitter. Follow Barely There Pod on Twitter so you get all your updates. We occasionally post Pinata Farms on there every once in a while because it's the greatest fucking app in the world.
Greatest app on the planet.
I've got nothing more. I'll see you on Friday, Lucas. Bear down.
Yeah, bear down.